I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, 5 on a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk, so I'm letting them talk. Gotta keep quiet, maneuver in signs to let them in, chalk up their body, another one body, that's just how it go. I got some secrets, I'm shaking the game so they stay on their toes. Stay in your lane, I to stay on the go. I can play with the pros and act like a rookie, so they overlook me. Then I double up again under their nose. None of them cold, they just got lucky but never adapted. So I'm to the one if it's coming to blows. My enemies cutting it close. I let them think that they got me, but what do you know? I had them beat before we ever spoke. I'm ready for smoke. I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Startup on the Blocks. We're glad to have you here today. We're ending up our first quarter of the year, and hope all the startups out there met all their first quarter goals. And we're going to look forward to a great event tonight. We have Blanca. Hopefully, she'll be on here soon. But in the meantime, I'll give you a quick introduction to Startup on the Blocks. So we're been at this for about a year and a half now, which is pretty exciting, and we've been doing it almost every week. I haven't missed an event yet, except for one storm. But we're excited about what we're doing and supporting the founders out there all over the world, and especially here in Northwest Florida. We want to pay a little tribute to our sponsors, Innisfree Hotels. They've been with us from the start, supporting our pitch competitions, and we sure appreciate their support. And we partner with both chambers, local chambers, the Gulf Coast Minority Chamber of Commerce and the Pensacola Chamber of Commerce, and they're both supporting minority businesses and growing minority businesses. So we're excited about that. And also, we partner with the Small Business Development Center out of UWF. They have been a great supporter of ours from the start, and they're actually right now working on a minority business task force to kind of see what some of the issues that minority businesses are having. And some of the data so far looks really, really interesting. I can't wait till we can get somebody on to share that with you, and it paints a picture, a clear picture of what's going on in the minority business arena. And can't give enough thanks to Bantucola. They're our streaming partner, and they host a Black Business Directory at bantucola.com. And so we appreciate their support, streaming us on Twix, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. They're getting the information out there to support founders who, no matter which platform they're on. And Gulf Power now, Florida Power and Light, and the first there are some great sponsors as well. Gulf Power has been with us from the beginning, and the first has been with us for quite a while now, and they've been supporting us in our pitch competitions and also a judging of our pitch contests. All righty, so I want to spend a little time on this slide to kind of give to get folks an idea a better idea of what Startup on the Blocks all about, and glad to see some of our regulars out in the audience there, and glad to see the folks out on Facebook as well. So continue to put your comments in as we go along. We're with Startup on the Blocks. If you look to the left there on our slide, we're actually working with we try to get more people interested in this startup ecosystem, and so we want them to, no matter which stage they're at, if they have an idea, we want to kind of get them involved in what we're doing. And I see Blanca, we're ready for you, so I'm going to bring you on because I want you to join in with this communication, Blanca. I don't know if you could see the slide too good on your phone, but I'll talk it out.
I can see it. Yes, thank you, and thank you for being amenable. That I'm sort of in transition. Hello, everyone. So great to see you.
Yeah, and I don't know if you realize it's been almost a year since you were on, so we thought it would be good to get you back and get an update on what's going on. So I'll continue with this slide. So Blanca, we on the left there, we like to work with all founders, and no matter what stage they're at, with their just having an idea or thinking about becoming a founder. And if they're already building their startup, we definitely want to work with them as well. And if you're out there already launched and making money, we want to help you and to help get you to the point where you can actually start scaling. And so we also work with small businesses too, because a lot of our resources as we talked about in the past, Blanca, a lot of the advice we give it applies to both, scalable startups and the traditional small businesses as well. And for the past few years, there's been a lot of programs out there for tech nonprofits, a nonprofit that are working on scalable ideas as well. So we because I think all this information is good for them all. And so to me, all these type individuals, there's a whole ecosystem out there waiting to help them. But as you get into the ecosystem, there are some things you need to learn in order to take advantage of the ecosystem. So in the middle here, we do this weekly networking and weekly best practice training. And so I guess, Blanca, you're going to share some of the stuff that you continue to learn about the women founders, Latinx founders, BIPOC founders, and what's going on in the Atlanta scene. And we're looking forward to hearing about this. So this weekly event gives the founders an opportunity to hear about all these different type of programs and activities that are going on. So earlier this year, we got access to the Lean Stack program. So are there anybody up in Atlanta, Blanca, that's actually, are you aware of, that's using that Lean Stack by Ashmaria, that platform?
I'm not familiar with the name. Tell me a little bit more about the program.
Yeah, so you're familiar with the Lean Canvas, and so Lean Stack is the Lean Canvas was developed by Ash Maurer, and he actually created an online system called Lean Stack. So it's basically the embodiment of the Lean Startup methodology, and it's a Lean Startup framework. So that's what that Lean Stack is. So most people are familiar with it, but they may not be familiar with it by the name of the actual framework. Yes.
Yeah, so, and that sounds like it's a really great tool to help you figure out, how to build out the technology that's going to help you support the capacity in your business.
Yeah, so one of the things that got me excited about it, it has this foundations type training and this business model design training. So the package allows you to learn about the best practices for building a startup, plus and the playbooks for building a startup, and also it has some tools in there to help you make sure your business idea and your business model design is feasible, viable, and desirable. But one of the things we're finding out that, and you may be also up there, Blanca, is that the founders like to go ahead and start building stuff before they understand whether it's viable or not. And so this business model design, there's a tool in there that helps you figure out if you have a viable business model before you actually go out there and building something, spending money. And that's a really great tool to force you to make sure you have a really a good business model design. And so we're starting to, our founders are starting to work with that tool and some of the other tools in there to actually validate, that they're doing. Because if you go out there spending money developing an MVP and you're not sure if the way you design your business is viable, you're wasting a lot of money. But the other thing is too is when you're pitching your business idea, if you know if you use this tool and it validates you have a viable business model design, then you have a lot more confidence in pitching your idea.
Absolutely. I mean, so I don't know how much you all have talked about sort of the design thinking process, but that's just something that I feel really invested in. And
Yes,
and I know it can be really hard to put something out there that you feel isn't quite ready. But that's really how, and this includes the business model. I think a lot of times when people think about design thinking, you're thinking about product.
Yes.
the reality is that once you've done enough customer discovery and you've done enough tests and you have somewhat of a prototype, or perhaps it's more of a minimum viable product, and you have a sense of where your, business can sit, then you actually have to have a sense of, not only from the competitive landscape analysis, understand like where you sit in the market, but
Yes.
also being able to see what are other types of products, businesses like yours, that you could have a sense of what are viable business models. But then you actually have to test it. So a lot of times what you think is going to be a viable business model it's not exactly that. And so you have to kind of put it out there and see how customers interact with you in terms of
Yes.
actually putting stakes to it, right? Really engaging with your product from a financial standpoint. That's what really proves whether or not you have a business.
Yes, yes, that's exactly right. And so the lean stack framework, there are a lot of it's used all over the world, and a lot of colleges and corporations use it for corporate innovation, and a bunch of accelerator programs use it as well. The business model validation part of that framework is actually an accelerator program. And so that's so. And one of the reasons why we got this, when you were on a year ago, Blanca, we were referring people to do the startup school, startupschool.org, startupschool.com. We were scheduling, encouraging people to enroll in that particular training, but we had no insight on what the progress they were making. We still tell you to do that, but now we want you to. We can invite you to this business model design class, and also the once you're sure you got your business model design, then you're ready to go into the business model validation part of, which is the accelerator program. So the best thing to Blanca, a lot of the programs you're dealing with, let's say and the program does include the design thinking like you're talking about. It's all based on that. But the idea, one of the reasons why we got the platform, because we want to open that up to more people, not just Northwest Florida, but folks in Atlanta or wherever, that they can actually help their startups, founders, kind of make sure leverage some of these tools to kind of move forward. So additionally, and so we're very excited about the opportunity to be in conversation with Ash, and he's the guy that's working really every day, working on startup stuff and startup ideas and how do you train founders. He's the guy that's his full-time job. It's the supporting founders, and that's fantastic. I see Ron Moore is out there, my friend out in St. Louis, Missouri. So he's been tuning in regularly. So we're glad to have him in, and so to kind of learn some of the stuff, and he's going to help us get spread it out over there to St. Louis as well. But so that's one of the major additions, Blanca, that we've acquired since you last was on back last April. But we also have the Lean Time IO, which is a project and task management software that has a lot of things in it too. So we host that software so our founders, startup founders, can use that to manage, their building their startup as well. We also have the Startup Rocket framework. So that's actually a step-by-step a cloud-based system where it leads you to step-by-steps on the things you need to do to build an MVP. And so that's a really neat tool to actually have. So we've got the tools to make sure the founders are not out there spinning their wheels. And so in addition to all those tools and stuff we do this weekly networking event and best practice. And we also do this newsletter that has a lot of opportunities, and so we definitely want to talk to you about some of the opportunities you've seen up there in Atlanta, and in the programs you're working with. How are your founders taking advantage of those opportunities that are out there as well? And of course, we do our pitch competitions, and we also have some innovation labs where we develop software and we allow our founders to use it, and we also provide mentors. And so how would you describe the startup ecosystem? I'll let you describe the startup ecosystem, Blanca.
In Atlanta, right?
Huh? Yeah, we just in Atlanta. Yeah, but that's a pretty good example.
Yeah, so I mean, this is an exciting time to be building a business. Lots of corporations, funders, larger institutions that, when I started doing this, when I started working with companies, just really didn't understand how to engage with companies. And we're still in the beginning stages. Don't get me wrong. This is not an easy path. When you're looking at, say, for example, one of the things that a lot of founders look for is that initial form of capital. Really any business is going to be looking for that initial form of capital. But when you're starting a startup, it's a little bit more ambiguous, right? Because it's not like you're starting a cupcake shop. And so you're looking for a loan for, a kitchen and, a business space. But you do need often money to build runway so that you can test out your products, so that you can engage with potential customers, so that you can bring on key technology and other types of team members, and build out the foundations of your business. And the truth is that a lot of finance entities have not known how to engage with startups other than really VCs, where, for a lot of our early stage companies, and especially our diverse-led companies, VC is not always a great route, right? So, but that's changing. It's changing, and we're in the beginning stages of that shift, of that transition. But it's an exciting time to be here in the southeast of the U.S. There's some really cool, diverse, focused funds focused on women, funds that are focusing on social impact. They're starting to see the value of that. But more importantly, there's so many people who want to get in the game of supporting entrepreneurs over the course of their growth. So if you're out here in Georgia in the Southeast, and you're looking to, start a company, or you're somewhere in that early stage, which could mean that, hey, you already have customers and you have a product, but you're still building a strategy for scaling. That's still early stage.
Yes.
There's lots of players. So I think one of the things that's been really exciting is to see more accelerator type of programs really kind of come into play, and that focus on specific industries. If you're building a health tech company versus, say, a marketplace, that looks really different, and doesn't look different, just look different in terms of the types of products that you're building. It also looks different in terms of like what challenges you have in the industry. So if you're an ed tech or a health tech company, most of the time you're going to be dealing with customers that are sitting in a space that are in institutions that have really low adoption rates. They don't have that flow of they don't have the agility to bring in innovation. And so you have so many challenges around that. You also have challenges around compliance. So I'm really excited to see some of these accelerators and programs that are focused on industries, so that they can help those companies build faster and find the connections, like leverage the right networks, and figure out how to navigate some of those things in a more supportive way. So for a perfect example, it's like, we're just talking about business model design. And one of the things that I know is a struggle, if some of you are out there and you're putting your product out there and you're ready to, make some money, is that pricing strategy. And if you're building in certain industries, you have to build into your customer acquisition costs things like compliance, insurance, that a lot of times what I'm finding with my founders is that they're finding out the moment they hit that contract, they're working with a large enterprise customer, or they're working with a hospital, or they're working with a local education county. And then it turns out there's all of these requirements. And they just priced their service based on like how they were going to execute, without thinking about all of those requirements around compliance. So that's that's one of the things that's really exciting. Another thing that is really exciting is that everybody's trying to figure out how to be part of this conversation and how to be responsive
Okay.
to diverse founders, women founders. So one of the things that I'm seeing a lot is that there's just so many different funding opportunities. And I would just leverage your coaching network. I would leverage the people that support you to find those grants and position yourself for those grants. Because especially when it comes to grants, sometimes there's just like some red tape you have to go through, and it can kind of feel like a headache, or maybe even feel like impossible in terms of like, whatever. Maybe you have to have a business license within the city where they're giving the grant or what have you. It's totally worth it, because any kind of capital that you can access that is not a loan and that doesn't require you giving away any equity, you have to think about it strategically, right? Like what's the actual exchange in terms of like the time and the effort it's going to take to get it, but if you can get it. So how do you even access any of those opportunities? Well, one of the things that, so when you go from where we were 4 or 5 years ago, even just a couple of years ago, where the ecosystem was really bare and you're just trying to find support, you're trying to find programs, you're trying to find opportunities, to where we are now, where there's just so many opportunities. Well, how do you even capitalize on that? And capitalize on the time, because it's not always going to be like that. It's a trend, right? Is you have to have like that strong story. So really understanding like, who is your audience, who gets excited about the problem that you're solving, who, not just the specific customers, but who is invested in that problem, and really being able to tell that story powerfully about what you're solving. Why is it important? One of the things that when I was working with Joey Womack over at Goody Nation, and one of
Yeah.
the ambassadors said to us, hey, why should I care? And that's such a great question,
Yes.
because it does force you to think about like, okay, well, I really care about this because it's part of my story, because I'm in this industry, because this problem is important to me, but it's not important to everyone. So how do I make it a clear and compelling argument that this is something that anybody who can understand what I'm doing should care about and should get excited about and understand why it's so moving. So that's really important when you're dealing with a time like now, where there's just so many different opportunities. One of the things that also has been really exciting is seeing just so many different solutions that are identifying problems that, like,
Yes.
quote unquote, didn't exist before. Right. So that's another thing, is if you are looking at a problem and you're thinking, is this really a problem? Like, do I have really a business here? Yes, you do. Yeah. Like, you have to trust the fact that one of the challenges that we've had, even in the most recent innovation economy, and what it's looked like overall, is because the people who are identifying problems and who think and who are saying, here are the things that we need to build solutions for, are coming from a very specific experience. And now there's so many more voices at the table. And so that means that what we thought a market was, it's so much broader than that. And there's just so many more ways of addressing problems and creating solutions, and there is a real market opportunity in those businesses. So just that's one of the exciting things I've seen. I work a lot with Black and Latina women, and Black and Latina women, one of the predominant things that they deal with is that a lot of times the problem that they see or experience,
Mhm.
it's not a real problem for most people, right?
Okay. Okay.
Uh, so it's like, so it might be a hair business, it might be a business that deals with being busy,
Mhm.
being a working mom.
Yes.
It might be a business around like certain problems with your healthcare, with your kids' healthcare, with schools, with dealing with schools, that 2 years ago it was a real problem for all of these powerful consumers, women and women of color, but it's just simply not been something that's existed in the market, because the people who are thinking of ideas and the people who are identifying problems didn't experience that, so they just didn't solve anything around it. And
Yes.
so I love seeing all these marketplaces that are coming up that are, offering different alternatives for self-care, beauty, caring for your children, balancing your life better. But I would say that let's go beyond that. Like, now that that conversation is open, this is an opportunity for you to say, you know what? I want to build a company that is going to disrupt how we think about these problems, like how we think about being a busy mom, or how we think about, the problems with beauty or whatever. Like really not just solving for the world we live in, but almost like redefining what is the world we live in, why those problems really exist, and bringing in solutions that empower communities that are also markets, that are also customers. So that's the opportunity that I see right now.
Okay.
And the other thing that I think is really, really important. So one last thing that I have seen that is so exciting that is happening in the last 2 years.
Okay. Go
Is
ahead.
just seeing more BIPOC and women of color engaged in learning how to be funders. So when we
Okay.
talk
I
about,
got
right, when we talk about like, okay, so alternatives capital. So what are the two main things that a lot of founders really, really struggle with when they're building their business? Is access to capital and access to the right network, right?
Yeah.
And so what if you turn that on its face and you say, well, I'm not going to depend on a fund. I'm going to start a fund. I'm going to
Okay.
understand how that VC works, and I'm going to disrupt it to work for the community of people that I know, the community of entrepreneurs that I know and understand. What if I, decided to develop some alternative forms of capital? So one of the things that has been really cool is seeing, women of color leaders going into cryptocurrency and DeFi, and just really engaging in not just building their own alternatives to capital that respond to the communities that they understand, but also having entrepreneurs like yourselves, understanding how to engage in that system and demanding that there's new tables in a way that just didn't exist before. So, so those are the things that came to mind when you were like, "Hey, let's give me an update, Blanca." Well, that's really some of the things that have blossomed over the last year.
Yeah. So the ecosystem, as you described, there's a lot of things going on, that you're saying there. But, in order to take advantage of those things in the ecosystem, you kind of have to know, how to pitch your idea, where you can, when you put in your application for an accelerator, pre-accelerator, or a pitch competition. So so what are some of the mistakes, or what do you all do to train people to get ready for these type things? Because I'm assuming that you're involved in some programs. I remember a year ago you were, and I'm assuming you still are. So, but you also want these founders to take advantage of these other things that are in the ecosystem. So how do you get them ready for these other opportunities?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's funny because back in the day, just 2 or 3 years ago, even before the pandemic, the kinds of things that I was asked to teach were sort of the typical things, sort of like business model canvas,
Yeah.
customer acquisition, scales, a strategy to scale, building, the right mentor network, these kinds of things, and certainly marketing, branding was
Mhm.
an important topic. But now we talk about storytelling, and I
Okay.
that and, and storytelling is a little bit about the pitch, but
Yeah,
it's not
it
it's
is.
not it's not just about the pitch. It's about you understanding why you're doing this. Why did you get involved in building a compelling story? Because the truth is that, like, when you're talking to stakeholders, whether it's customers or an investor or someone that you want to get into an accelerator for, or maybe you want a loan, those people hear pitches all day. They get sold to all day. So what they want to hear is a human story. And there is a human story behind your
Mhm.
business. It might not be the exact story that has to do with like the product, although a lot of times it is. It might be the reason why you're doing a startup. It might be the reason you became an entrepreneur. It might be your team. How did you guys come together and come behind this? It's having that sort of that origin story, the human behind the story, that is so important.
Yeah.
And being able to construct something that is compelling. Again, answering that question of why should I care? And so, yeah, so in the last year or so, I've really been teaching a lot of workshops around storytelling, and it's just not what you would think. And the interesting thing is that I've done it enough times now that there's kind of a formula that I've run into, and you
Okay.
know where we start. It's funny because it's like most people are like, I don't know, like you build out a pitch, like here's the pitch format or whatever,
Hmm.
and we don't start there. We
Okay.
start with essentially what is an introspective exercise. We start with you,
Okay.
about who you are, why you're doing this, what drives you, why
Hmm.
is this important,
Hmm.
what do you care about, what are those stories that define you
Hmm.
as a person,
Okay.
um, because even if that's not directly what you integrate into the storytelling of your business, it gives you a lot of insight as to how you're going to craft that story. So we start with you, and then another thing that I think most people know is important, but
Yeah.
maybe think, oh, I'll figure that out later. Is not just the vision and the mission of your company, but sort of like, what are the values of your company? What are the things that
Mhm.
drive you? You know why? Because what is this guy's writer? This writer Cynic, I think is his last name, and he talks about the why, because people buy into something they believe in, and that
Okay.
is so real. That is so real. I would definitely look this guy up. He's got some great TED Talks and YouTube videos, but he's got a great book of like the why,
Okay.
and he essentially talks about that, like, people don't just buy products that solve a problem for them. That's boring. The reality is that we make monetary decisions based on the emotional part of our brain. We're motivated by emotions to
Hmm.
make purchases. So they need something to believe in. They're buying your product because they believe in you, because
Yeah.
they believe in the world that you are creating,
Yeah.
right?
So if you're filling out an application to be in a showcase for startups or a pitch competition, I hear you indirectly saying that you have to appeal to the person that's reviewing your application in the ways that you're actually talking about.
Yeah.
It's not just cut and dry. I think what you're saying too is that that storytelling part of it is it's also showing how you are connected to the problem you're solving, and I think it helps out in that way. But the bottom line is, I think to kind of sum up this part of it is the startup ecosystem. There's so many things out there. One of the new startups in our area, Nikhil, and I think he's going to come on and like he's going to be our speaker next guest next week, and so he's been applying for these different showcases, and so I think he applied for the I'm trying to think. I think it was the Emerge Americas that's coming up next week down in Miami. I mean next month down in Miami, and so he didn't get in, but he got free. They gave him free tickets to attend. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? Yeah, and so now he gets to see what it's all about. He gets to see the other startups and they listen to their pitches and what was different about them than and it's just a kind of a learning experience from that sense. So, but you do have to, when you're want to take advantage of this ecosystem. I can guarantee you, if you go through that lean stack, that foundations, and that business model design, and you get your thing designed right, you're not going to have any trouble communicating, what your business is all about. And so I was talking to a couple of founders in the past few weeks, and I listened to them talk about their business, and so the question is, when somebody start telling you about their business, you kind of have to paint a picture, and you also have to, it has to be, give them a point of reference so they have something to go on, so they can kind of sync up with what you're saying. And so in the lean canvas, as opposed to the business model canvas, it talks about what is your high level concept. And so when you reference something somebody knows, and then you explain how your your business or the business you're in, how similar to that is, and so they kind of get on the same page with you in the start. But to me, if you're filling out an application and nobody understands what you're talking about, then they're going to have trouble giving you a high enough score to kind of get in to this program. And so have you been on any where you evaluate the applications to some of the programs you all have, and what
Oh
are
my
some of the,
goodness, yes.
yeah.
So that, you just brought up, I was just thinking as you were speaking, you brought up such an important point, which is to really understand and know your audience.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the foundational part of a sort of foundational piece of what I get to teach a lot of is so, and this goes back to my own origin story and why I'm so compelled about, so compelled by the work of working
Mhm.
with innovation companies and entrepreneurs. I'm an immigrant to the United States. I came from
Mhm.
Chile,
Yes.
and in fact, I was kind of, I don't know, some people call it a third culture kid. I mean, there was a lot of different struggles that were involved with that, but I think the primary one was that, like, at some point, very young in my young childhood, I had been back and forth enough between cultures that I was always in between.
Yeah.
And so something that I learned as a survival strategy that I've brought to sort of sublimated in my professional career and had the opportunity to bring into a lot of what I do and the work that I do with startups right now
Hmm.
is, being able to understand how to walk into, think about in us. And I know many of you can relate to this feeling of being the only one, of being othered, of not belonging,
Hmm.
of not having, of being in a space where you are meant to be quiet, where you're meant to be smaller, where that kind of thing. Um, and learning how to walk into a space and figure out right away, you know, what are the values and the culture of that space? Who are the powerful players and why are they powerful? And what's really important there? What is the currency of power
Okay.
in a certain space? So what I mean by that concretely, let me translate that a little bit, is to say, if you are pitching your idea, you have to be able to frame what you're doing and you have to be able to tell your story in a way that is understood, right? So
Hmm.
this is why it's so important, first of all, to do customer discovery, because when you're doing customer discovery, you're not just understanding whether or not you actually are addressing a valid problem and can and have a solution that actually makes sense to customers, but you're understanding the world that your customers live in and how they frame the problem. But
Yes.
when we come to this conversation, we're talking about understanding how to get stakeholders, so high value stakeholders, to believe in and buy into your idea. And for that,
Yes.
you have to be able to understand how they see it. So one of the mistakes that I know a lot of the founders that I work with make, especially in the beginning, is that you just come in and you're like, I'm doing this and it's awesome. And here's the market data. And you're just throwing a bunch of stuff at people without really asking them, what does it look like for you? How do you experience this? Tell me how you define this problem. Okay. So here's where I come in. Here's how this fits in. And then additionally, when you're trying to get funding, or you have something, you need something valuable, you have an important ask, you have to be able to understand how to translate that ask in the code of your audience,
Okay.
in other words, in the language and the way that people are framing it, and understand the currency of power that exists within the space that you're navigating. So I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Let's say you're going into VC funding. You've decided, okay, I'm going to go get venture capital funding, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to do a pre-seed. So I'm just going light. I'm just going to ask for, I don't know, 500K or 750K to get my technology off the ground.
Okay.
Well, it's not as simple as that, right? You have to be able to understand, what is it that the investors that I'm talking to, what is it that they care about? Why are they here? Why are they at the table?
Hmm.
What what do they have to explain to the people that are over them
Yes.
about investing in me, right? Um, so for a lot of the companies I'm working with, they're looking to build, a straight technology product startup. So they're looking to scale. And so if they're talking to a VC or, a funder, a lot of times with that funder, what is that funder concerned about? They're concerned about, usually it's two areas of things. It's either, is there enough opportunity in the market? Is that
Yes.
market large enough?
Mm-hmm.
And has the company told me a compelling story enough that tells me that they could potentially capitalize on a small portion of a large market, so a significant return, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other question they're going to be asking is the founder I'm speaking to, do they have the team, do they have the capacity to actually capitalize on that opportunity?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's typically the two areas that they're evaluating you on. So you
Yes.
might go in there and say, this is really meaningful and it's a big problem. And, I've got this amazing solution and I'm like really good at building products, or, whatever story. But if you're not answering that question, which a lot of times people don't ask directly, because just like with your customers, you have to have insight. You have to be watching and be observant enough so that you know them more than they know themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
so for a lot of that, it's doing a lot of what I had to do, as an immigrant trying to, find my place, is going into a room and just watching, like, what are people talking about? How are they talking about it? I mean, the fact is that, like, the first step is just getting in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
well,
Well,
once you're there, right?
yeah.
Like, what do you do
So
with
like,
that information? Mm-hmm.
yeah. So like we had Brandon on last week, and
Oh, Brandon, yeah.
yeah, Brandon Storms, and yeah, and I think we had him on after you last year, but he started talking with funders early and got him on his email list, and so kept him updated with his progress on how he was coming along with this startup. But I think my whole point is, and I'll just throw this out there: if you want to learn what VCs or funders want, listen to them ask questions in a pitch competition. They'll give you some insight to what they're looking for. But you can tell by the questions they're asking. So you can learn a lot of things from looking at pitch competitions and the type of question funders ask. But one of the things that's so exciting for us right now is that we have this in the business model design part of Lean Stack. It has this tool in there, this traction roadmap tool. And so I think there's 7 variables that you put in this tool, and it helps you determine if the way you design your business is actually viable. And so what Ash was saying when we were going through the training, he said that a lot of funders won't tell you they know how to make these back of the envelope calculations when you tell how much you're charging for your product and stuff like that, they literally can, in a matter of minutes, determine if you have a viable thing. But it's actually based on some numbers, and that you actually conclude in your pitch, and they can take those numbers and determine how feasible of viable your business is. And so, and what they tell you is, maybe you're too early. You're not. You're too early for us. But the truth of the matter is, they're actually evaluating your business model design to see if it's actually really viable.
Yep. And they can just do that in their head because they see thousands of companies, and you're right. I mean, so something you said that Brandon did, which is, one of the things that a lot of also founders that I work with make the mistake around is, they'll ask me like, oh, who can I meet? Who's going to help me with this? And a lot of times I'll say to them, hey, go to this event. Hey, I want you to go to this entrepreneurs night, or come with us to this, pitch competition. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, why do I have to do that? And it's exactly that. It's like, a lot of times it's in those environments that you have the opportunity to learn what kind of questions are, your valued stakeholders asking companies. What are the conversations that are happening in there? What's the culture? What's the vibe? And how do you fit into that, right?
Mhm.
And then it's a lot of times it's meeting somebody. Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Blanca. I've got this company, and oh, would you like to let's connect on LinkedIn, and I'll put you on my investor list, and then you're just having a conversation. Because if you think about any of these sort of of fundraising sort of engagements, all of that is, business is as old as time. It's a partnership. You're going into a partnership, and a partnership may as well be a marriage. And so you're cultivating the relationships that are going to eventually fund and sustain your business years, but sometimes years before. So it goes back to the also, just as a quick tangent, just goes back to this idea of like the overnight success really took 10 years. And that
Yes.
is truly the case. It is truly the case. A lot of times you see people and you say, how did they get there in 6 months? They didn't.
No,
They didn't.
absolutely, absolutely not. So Ron asked this question: what's the name of that software? So Ron, we're talking about the Lean Stack framework, and so I'm pretty sure I sent you an invite to the. So just respond if you already sponsored. Just start going through the foundations and the business model design training. So when you build your Lean Canvas, and you look up above the Lean Canvas, there's the tools are up there for you to use to see if you're. Let me see. I might be able to pull that up real quick if I can find. I got to find which screen I actually have it on. If you just bear with me a second here, because it is pretty important. Uh, so the purpose for going through all that dialogue with you, Blanca, is that all these opportunities are out there, but you have to prepare for them, and so there's so Startup on the Blocks, we help you prepare for them, but there's other programs that help you prepare for these things. There's so many things out there that you can actually use. It's a pretty neat thing. So this looks a little different than what I saw the last time. I'm not sure if anybody's actually been working on it. It's just presented a little different. So this is a lean canvas and the Lean Stack training. So and up here, these are the tools. The lean canvas actually is a tool that you can actually use, and this traction roadmap to, let's see if we can get it to come up. And so I may need to blow it up a little bit here. It's like on 90%. So it's actually you could, with this tool, it actually is based on the minimal success criteria for your startup in 3 years. So you come up with a number for that. So the big question is, Blanca, is what if you're going after venture fund, where do they want you to be in 3 years if they're going to put money in there? And then what is the recurring monthly revenue that you're charging for your product? And then your churn, your retention, and then your acquisition rate and your conversion rate, referrals, and growth rates. And so you put all these things in there, and it'll come back and build this traction model based on that. So it says in order for you to reach that 10 million in 3 years, at the beginning now you need to be getting almost 80,000 visitors to your site that's to get in your pipeline that you're going to convert. And so it immediately tells you if that's, you can get an idea if something like that is viable or not. What's the possibility of you getting 10% of that and 8,000 signups a month?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So you
Totally.
start looking at the viability of your model, and so you can, with this tool, you can learn how to design your pricing and your business model or you can just see if it's viable. But it's not the end of the world if it's not viable. You just need to keep working on it and figuring out something that is viable.
Right.
Yeah, and so. these are some of the other tools in there. Your story pitch, like you were talking about the storytelling and stuff like that, and so you got these tools and the customer focus, and you can also do your sprints in there as well. And so, but yeah, these are some valuable tools, and the training that's provided in this lean stack thing. It's real straightforward training, but it takes a lot of, and it doesn't take a lot of time for the training, but the implementation is what, is actually what actually takes up the time. Yeah. So thanks for that question, Ron. But that's a tool that all of our founders and like, so if Blanca, if you have some good candidates that want to actually take advantage of some of this, just let me know. And then
I will. That's a great tool.
Yeah, and so that's what the deal is. So
and that it just gives you so much insight as to a lot of times when we sort of put down those projections and then we realize what it's actually going to take. And it's not that 8,000 is really so impossible, but now you realize that you would essentially have to be doing customer research and prototyping and testing and building traction around sort of the initial stage of your business for 3 years before you're even, and that, I say 3 years not randomly, because I work with companies that from the time that they meet me and say, hey, Blanc, I have an idea, and then they're in the ecosystem and they're doing, different things. And then I finally meet up with them again and they're like, Blanca, I'm finally there. I've got my first 5,000 users. And, it's typically 3 years later. Sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's a year and a half, but that's about as long as it actually takes. So if you think about, as you kind of have to commit to this long haul, and it gives you a sense of like how a lot of times these investors will be like, because that they're doing that math in their head. They already know, they see enough of this stuff to
that's exactly right. And so but the main thing is that nobody expects you to be full-time working on your thing at the idea stage anyway, or when this business design. And so I think a lot of founders make excuses, that they're that they think they need to be full time when you're actually designing your business model. You keep your day job.
Yep. And I would say that if in the beginning, when I'm going to pass you all a piece of advice that I've used many times that I think is really awesome, which is that, a mentor, you might know her, Lloyd. Her name is Kathleen Curry. She said to me, Blanca, you ask for money, you get advice. You ask for advice, a lot of times you get money. So imagine that if you're at this early stage and you're looking at that projection, and you're like, oh no, that's me. I thought I would be there, but I didn't realize what it would take to get there. A lot of times you can go to those stakeholders and say, hey, like, just, teach me how to think about this. Teach me the kind of questions you would ask. Because a lot of times it's those companies and those founders that those investors and those stakeholders are really invested in, that they pass their resources on because they've watched you build it from the ground up.
That's exactly right. And that's the point I was trying to make about Brandon. So in June, when he was on, he just had his mock-ups. So he's launched now, and he's already got some amount of venture funding. And so, but I think like you mentioned earlier, you said it's the team and your ability to build what you had. And so, what I like about Brandon was he recruited these co-founders and these developers before he had any money to pay them. He just sold them on his idea, and they got involved and started helping him building. And so we're glad to see Nikhil on, because he's literally out there asking for advice, and he's actually following, the advice and he's learning a lot from actually applying for all these things, and it forces you to work on your startup. Yeah.
Right on, Nikhil. I love that. Find your champions. Find those people that are like, hey, you're not ready for what I could potentially give you, but you're ready for me to like be on board and help you build this. And most people, and I'm talking about so many of the investors, funders, high level mentors that I work with. It's interesting because if they have a founder trying to sell to them or trying to get money, they will be really hard. But if they have a founder saying, hey, give me some advice, I want to ask you questions, man, they love the most valuable thing, which is their brain power, that brain trust. They love to give it away. So
Yeah.
take advantage and find your people. Find the people that say, I love what you're thinking about. I love the problem that you're solving. The world that you paint for me is exciting. Let me help you figure this out. And be proactive about engaging with those people.
Yes, and so I put this Startup on the Block Founders Playbook, and so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to guide people along the path of their founder journey, and so this number one thing I got up there from Sam Altman, it's just a short 25 minutes of audio, broken up into key things like traction, team, and stuff like that, and each one of them is no more than 3 minutes each, but everything you and I have been talking about today, Blanca, is in that mindset playbook. And I listened to it I think it was either today or yesterday, and I hadn't listened to it in over a year, and it just floored me. The stuff we telling founders is the same stuff he's saying, and I don't know how long ago he created that, but
Right.
I know it was when he was with Y Combinator, but he's no longer with Y Combinator. And so, but that playbook is so valid. It's just so unbelievable.
It hasn't really changed much. And what's really exciting, talking about sort of this update for our Black, Indigenous, Latinx founders, for our women founders. There's just there's so much more diversity, and it's growing in terms of just the stakeholders and the fund, like I said, the funders that are out there. So don't be afraid to look for somebody who understands what you're trying to build, who you resonate with. And because the formula, like I said, business is as old as time. I had a wonderful a mentor, XEE. She works in building essentially what is equity in the technology of Google. Look her up. She's amazing. X. She said to me, Blanca, when it comes to the basics of what we're doing, this is like from like temple times. Like a pizza shop is a pizza shop. We're just building technology, but still pizza shop. So you gotta build in that nuance of the problem that you're solving. But at the end of the day, a lot of these tools are the same.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, when you were on before, you were talking about Walker's legacy. Are you still involved in that at all?
No, I haven't. I haven't been involved in the last year because they have gone through a transition. So I was one of their accelerator instructors, and they're changing the accelerator format, and they're changing a lot of the different things. But yes, I mean that's still Walker's legacy. That's my family. I will always be part of Walker's legacy.
Yeah. In your current role, and I guess we didn't get a chance to remind people what your current role is.
Yeah.
So go ahead and do that. So,
And I would love to do that because so I'm actually involved in a pilot project that's being launched by the Minority Business Development Agency. If you're not familiar, it's a federal agency that supports, from the Department of Commerce, that supports minoritized founders, entrepreneurs. It's traditionally been involved with traditional enterprise founders, but they're going into the startup space because we're there. And so I'm part of an innovative pilot project, which is called the Business Growth Hub, and it's actually focused on the Southeast. So if you're in Florida, or maybe you're in Tennessee, maybe you're in Mississippi, maybe you're in Louisiana, maybe you're in South or North Carolina, it doesn't have to be. I'm in Georgia, but the program that I'm a part of is expansive across the Southeast. And I've currently taken on a role where we're piloting something called MBDA at. So how do we bring the values of supporting Black and Brown founders, entrepreneurs that the MBDA has been doing for the last 40 years into different organizations that already support entrepreneurs but haven't had really strong diverse engagement. So currently, for the last year and a half, I've been working at Georgia Tech's Advanced Technology Development Center, which focuses on, well, we actually work with a variety of companies, but we have a portfolio of technology startup companies. And it's the oldest incubator in the country. I don't think most people know that, but it's been around since 1979. So it's pretty old. It's the first incubator, actually. actually, the first technology incubator, even before Silicon Valley was a thing.
Yes.
But they haven't had a lot of success supporting minority entrepreneurs. So I've been there supporting our engagement with our Black and Brown led technology startups. So I'm there. So I'd love to hear from y'all if you have any additional questions or if I can help support anybody and certainly be part of the hub because, like I said, it's for all of us here in the Southeast.
Yeah, I think we include that in our newsletter. So is there anything so are you all finding out anything interesting in what you're all doing, or lesson learned or anything like that?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you for asking that. So one of the reasons that we wanted to pilot with this project and make it Southeast expansive is because one of the things that we know about the Southeast is that, there's little pockets here and there of people that are, organizations, ecosystems that are supporting founders, but we're not interconnected. And there's, places like Miami or Nashville or Atlanta that have like some powerful technology hubs. How do we bring those resources to across the Southeast, right? How do we support each other and sort of funnel each other? Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of like mycelium in the roots of trees and how trees communicate through each other to each other through the root system, and they communicate. They often share nutrients or will alert each other of like one tree that's diseased, and we use that sort of analogy to pilot this sort of more collaborative ecosystems project. And, one of the things that we've learned is that, collaboration is hard. And part of that is because so many of us, and I know you all can relate to this, we just have this scarcity competitive mindset. We keep thinking there's a small pie, there's just this much funding, there's just this much in my market, there's just this much, what have you. And if I don't get my little slice, I'm not going to get anything. When in reality, the pie doesn't exist. The pie is actually what we make it.
Yes.
So a lot of it has been us. So, and I say this very intentionally. A lot of us has been learning, humbly learning,
Yes. Gotcha.
but also teaching each other how to be more collaborative and support each other and get each other out of this mindset of like, it's only me or I have to take credit. Think about it, folks. Is it just Startup on the Blocks or this program or that program that got you where you are? No, it's all of the different people that came in at different parts of your journey that got you to that fundraise, that got you to that big customer, that got you to raise that company or whatever the learning, the growth, the transformation that you were able to reach in this path. It's all these different people. And rather than thinking of it like, oh, I got to take credit for this founder who, whatever, we say, we did this together, because that is the truth, is that we do it together. So
yeah, so like what I agree with all of that, Blanca, and it is we have to work together in an ecosystem and share information and support each other, and so I appreciate you bringing that up. There was one last thing I wanted to kind of ask you about. We're dealing with a lot of solo founders, here at Startup on the Blocks. And so how are you all handling that stuff? And what do you see some of the strategies that are going on in the Atlanta ecosystem up there for solo founders?
Yeah. So being a solopreneur is a lot of times part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the beginning stage. There are two things that are a killer to a business over time. One
Mm-hmm.
is a market, right?
Yeah.
So some of our great companies, took a really big hit during COVID because, the market that they were in didn't exist anymore because we were all home or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And not having the right team.
Yeah. So that team thing, we have already talked about that, but it's I think, and what I would say about that is that if you pitch your business idea right, you should ultimately end up with the team that can, because it's the same way. So like it's just like you're going after funding. When you recruit a co-founder, you actually, that's actually funding, because that's somebody that can actually, maybe if it's a tech co-founder, maybe somebody who can build and help you go from where you are to the next level. And so
Yeah.
and so that sort of leads into so So do you see up in Atlanta, do a lot of the founders have trouble building their MVP, so are they making progress and being able to get to where they get the MVP and start getting some traction and getting to the point where they could potentially scale?
Hmm. Um,
Or do they already come in with their MVP? Or
no,
that's
no, it's a struggle. I would say, okay, so I have a couple thoughts around that. One is I hear that a lot from my founders. It's like, oh, Blanca, I really need a tech team. I need a CTO. The truth is that these days you can build, in the definition that we have at ATDC, a high fidelity model
hmm
that is viable enough so that you can at least get information from your market. And so, in other
yeah,
words, you can get early adopters that for them it's a hair on fire. You have the strongest value proposition, and it might look somewhat automated in the front, but it's actually you just kind of hacking in the back. You
yeah,
can do that in the beginning. There's so many no code options. There's so many different ways. So now, of course, it always comes down to capacity. Like I hate working by myself. I feel like my intelligence is 10 times it's collaborative intelligence when
yeah,
I'm working
yeah.
in a
I
team.
believe, I like
So that's
that.
really where your storytelling is so powerful. I love the story of the Coins co-founders. Coins is a fintech company based here in Atlanta, and I know Christian and Nate very well. And I remember Nate, who is sort of the typical CTO. He's an introverted tech guy. And Christian would go to these tech meetups, and he went on what is um, this freelancer's website.
Yeah.
Anyways, one of those freelancer websites, and he got somebody to build like one of those animated videos of his idea.
Okay.
And it was already testing out the MVP just like with an Excel sheet. He was just testing it out with his friends with an Excel sheet. But he had somebody on what's his name? I don't remember the name of this website. It's gonna come to me as soon as we're off. And had him build out a little video, and he would go around with his iPad and he would show this video. He'd be like, I'm building this, debt solution. And he would go to these tech meetups and these events, and it just with like technologists, engineers, or anybody that was like in that vibe in that space, and just show him his little video. And he showed it to Nate, and Nate would tell the story. He showed me this video, and I was like, this is something really exciting. This is something that moves me. I want to build it with him. And Christian is not a tech founder, and they built their initial product on Bubble, a no code platform.
hmm
So I would say that, like, I just, when you in the beginning stages, like I said, 3 years, like you're really just trying to understand your market and your business. So don't be afraid to build something scrappy and ugly baby with a
Yeah.
strong story behind it. And you can build that tech team later. Tech teams are really, really expensive. So
Yeah, yeah. So what you just described was what the lean stack is all about. It's you demo, sell, build. You get people interested, and then that's when you actually build it. So you demo it first, and then and yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's the way it goes, and that's what the um, lean startup methodology is all about. Is not only building something customers really want, and they want it bad. Well, I
yeah.
won't keep you on forever, but is there any parting words? And we're sure glad to have you back on, and I'm glad to see you still hanging in there. We're still hanging in here. So any parting words before we get off here?
Yeah, no, I guess the solo founder question really kind of sticks with my heart because I feel you all. Just know you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
Startups on Blocks, the other organizations like that where you have not just like all these great resources, but the community. This is
Yeah.
the community that is behind you. You're never alone when you have your fellow founder champions community. So sometimes that's your first team before you build the real team. So I hope that we can support you in that way. And I look forward to talking to you all about the hub and the things that I'm doing over here in Atlanta. And yeah.
All right, and so I really appreciate you being on. And yeah, if you ever need me for anything, I'll be definitely willing to help out. And we sure thank you for supporting Startup on the Blocks, and we're so happy to have you sharing your expertise. And thanks again. And so we'll keep in touch, and we'll see you soon. Thanks everyone for participating in Startup on the Blocks, and we're here to help you grow your startup idea and grow your business, help you scale, whatever. We want to support you as a founder to move forward, and look forward to having Nicole, well, I'm trying to pronounce his name right, Nikhil, next week. And so we're looking forward to having him on. We'll see you, Blanca. Thanks for your
Yes,
dedication.
thank you.
All righty.
It's my
Bye-bye.
pleasure. Thank you, Lloyd. Thanks, everybody.